Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. And for the past several years since the inception of the CDL, there's been some controversy every single year over breaches of competitive integrity. Octane says these things just tend to happen nowadays because of the players that are now in the Pro League, saying that they do not act in the same way as they used to in the pre-CDL, CWL-esque days, where players will now snake, abuse stair glitches, use everything to their advantage. If there's anything in this new game, as I'm sure there will be, which is exploitable, the players will use it and make the gameplay experience far worse than it would be otherwise. What's the solution here? Put SlasheR back in charge of everything. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into. Firstly, I thought this is kind of cool. Modern Warfare 3 comes out in a couple of days. JK looked back at the top 20 earners from the original Modern Warfare 3 way back in 2011. Now, of course, the top earners here were pretty much the entirety of that OpTic gaming team that won the COD XP, of course it was called, at the time. The first, like, really big tournament of, well, anything, I think, $1 million tournament, right? Yeah, it must have been 100k each for the players that won that. And then it's kind of crazy that Vengeance, that's the only money who won during that game's life cycle, because, to be honest, there wasn't really much competitive action that did happen. There was some back in Modern Warfare 3, but it was nowhere near as big as it, was in Black Ops 2, let's say. And it was kind of an interesting time because there wasn't an official league, really. So some of the tournaments were still on like Black Ops 1, which was the year before. That was obviously well liked by the pros. The only big tournament really was the COD XP tournament, which happens before Modern Warfare 3 even officially released, I believe, that these guys, Merc, Big T, Nature, and Vengeance, won for OpTic. But then for the rest of the year, there wasn't even that much Modern Warfare 3 played until right at the end of the life cycle, because some tournaments are still on Black Ops 1. It was kind of a wild time. And then Black Ops 2, finally, some sort of structure came around from Activision, and then, an official World Championship became a thing shortly after that. But legendary names in here, right? A lot of UK players as well. Gunshi, excellent. Some names that I'm not even familiar with, to be honest. We've got Swanee here, Shane, of course, Burns, who was then on United. Tommy, of course, makes the top 18 as well, which is kind of cool. But, yeah, not the same money that some of the players are making nowadays, but still not actually bad at all for the situation as it was back then. But over time in Call of Duty, the perception of the pros to how the game should be played has somewhat changed, and a few years ago the pros seemed to respect competitive integrity more than they do today, even if we look at some of the great Call of Duty titles. And maybe the Treyarch ones aren't the best examples, but let's say a game like Infinite Warfare was a reasonable example of a game that was completely broken in some respect. The skinny bot guy, whatever he was called, like Synapsis, or like he had the Reaper, or maybe it was Reaper, whatever it was, he could do the rewind thing, and he was so broken at the start of the game. The hitboxes were kind of broken on that character. Eventually the pros decided, alright, we won't play with that guy anymore. There was very briefly, as Octane will discuss here in a second, a problem going into Stage 1 playoffs that year when snaking became an absolute nightmare. And if you think snaking was bad in the last couple of Call of Duty titles, snaking in Infinite Warfare was built different because you literally could not see the guy's head. The character models were broken such that if you were snaking behind a head glitch, just moving backwards, crouching, just about going prone, sprinting forwards again, you could see over that box, but the other guy literally could not see you. Like, the camera angles were so broken that your character model was invisible and just impossible to kill. So it was so broken that some teams started to abuse it, and after this happened for some time, it became an absolute snake off. That Splice eventually got the job done and won. It's kind of funny because their logo was a snake, wasn't it? At the Stage 1 playoffs, they took down LG, and then the next event, Anaheim, those two teams were still the best teams. They both made the finals again. That time LG won, but after Stage 1 playoffs, because it was such a shambles to play and to watch, really, okay, there was some exciting maps there, but the snaking was at an all-time high. The players decided, all right, let's get rid of the snaking, and we will decide as a collective not to do it any longer. Now, to be honest, even at the time, one of the originators of snaking in that game and the abuse that it had, and it hadn't really seen that way in previous titles, was because Cellium was starting to absolutely make his name in the 8 scene, and he was snaking pretty hard on maps like Scorch, for example, was one of the most prominent ones. And ever since Cellium has come into the Pro League, we've started to see a similar trend arise. So this is a clip from a while ago now, but it's still relevant, especially with what SlasheR said on the flank just the other day as to how we can try and change things back in the right direction here. Because as I say, older games had their broken things. Maybe not as many broken things as the new games, but every game would have a couple of things that were broken and potentially abusable, but the pros would generally decide not to do so. They would gentleman's agreement doing that. They would prefer to play the game in a, gentlemanly way, or whatever you want to say. But over time, that has been phased out somewhat. And every single year since the CDL has come around, there's been some abuse of something. Even I was thinking MW19, the start glitch that apparently was being used. There was other things in that game as well. And then really just snaking for the last couple of titles. Obviously, even in early Vanguard, there were the smokes that people like Drazah were using. And lately you get guys like, Drazah, like Cellium, and even, guys like Awakening with sound EQ and stuff like this. It seems to just be nowadays a win-at-all-costs mentality, which wasn't necessarily the case a few years ago.
Pros hate snaking, even though the only ones that do it. It's not even an issue in the casual community. Oh, yeah. It's just how, bro, it's just like the literally you could do it too, phase up, like, win or die mentality that it is now. Like, before, like, prior to the CDL, like, we really didn't have snaking. We did an IW until it got patched, but, like, it was GA'd other than Splice doing it to beat me for a tournament. Like, there's a lot of things in the CWL that players didn't do strictly out of competitive integrity, and then once the CDL hit, all of that kind of went out the window, and you kind of just abuse everything that's in the game. So like it's just a different landscape. So the games, while they are not good, they look infinitely worse because of how we are playing them, as opposed to like them actually just being that bad. Like, don't get me wrong, the maps were shit, like the mechanics of the game weren't great, but like again, players are making the games not look very good as well. If we weren't doing all of the things, again, stair glitching and red dots through walls and all types of shit, then it wouldn't be that bad.
When you have a good product, that's when you start getting more eyes on all the brands and all the sponsors and all that other stuff. And that's how you start making profits. You need a good game. You need a good competitive game.
Shout out Slash.
We have SlasheR in the chat. Shit was better when I ran the league.
Any SWLs in chat?
World League, ladies and gentlemen.
Show some love to SlasheR, man. Let's get an SWL spam in the chat. This should be the SlasheR World League. I've had enough. I've had enough.
So I think Octane has a point that even in games a long time ago now that were played in competitive, there were broken things that could be abused, but generally the players preferred not to do so. Over the last few years, wherever it's come from, everything like this is being abused. And this, for example, is Cellium, snaking really hard. And, a lot of it does stem from Cellium, I think, because as soon as Cellium came around and started snaking, the general perception has been, well, we can't really stop him. I think it was early Cold War when Cellium was snaking every head glitch, and Formal and others were saying, look, this guy, we've got to try and stop him. Like, please, Simp, aBeZy, speak to Cell and tell him to stop, and then we'll all stop and it'll be way better for everyone. And apparently, well, this was a rumor at the time that Simp and Co had asked Cellium, like, look, can we just stop doing this? I think it's going to be better. The other teams want to blacklist us, all this stuff. Of course, it didn't matter. They won champs anyway. But, and Cellium was like, nah, like, thank you, but no thank you. Like, I'll keep doing it regardless. And then, of course, as Octane says, you get moments such as the stair glitch in the most recent title, which if you guys aren't familiar with the stair glitch, this is one example of it. I mean, this is probably the most egregious spot in the game. Examples like this on Hotel, when you literally couldn't see the guy that is just going prone on this staircase. And it's kind of, okay, it's not exactly like snaking, but it's not too dissimilar where he can't see anything. You can see everything from the perspective of the person who's doing it. And this was abused a lot during the season, right? The pros kind of tried to gentleman's agreement it and say that we won't do it, but the reality was that it still happens, especially in crucial moments, like here's Ghosty kind of using it towards the end of the season, and we had Clayster as well. There was a moment, I'm pretty sure, in that comeback up against the Los Angeles Thieves, where Clay was using it. There were other moments as well. I'm pretty sure, like, Ghosty used it against the Subliners, and then, like, Sib used it on him back, so it's all, look, it's in the game, it's a feature that can be used, it is what it is. There were other players that would use it on that spot on Embassy and like the outside near where the tennis court is. There was that little section you could use it on with the sniper rifle, for example. Bit of a shambles. And there was also, okay, this was like a straight up wall bang, but you guys also remember during the year when I think Skyz especially and other pros also were realizing that you could ping people through, like, let's say you pinged someone and it kind of tabbed onto them, then when you went behind a wall, it would show you the red dot through the wall, so therefore you could basically wallbang them or pre-fire them or whatever, which is another feature which probably isn't the most competitive and doesn't uphold the best competitive integrity, but nonetheless, some pros would abuse to their advantage. So I don't know if you guys think that had anything to do with, Octane deciding to call it a day and retire, I don't know if this is, caused a toll on any pro players that are getting frustrated with the way that things have progressed over the last couple of years. But I think it might be in part, and many of the OGs, I'm sure the likes of Accuracy and SlasheR and these guys aren't necessarily thrilled that today they live in a world where there's sound equalization getting abused by everyone, and if you don't use it, you're at a disadvantage. Everybody is snaking, and it doesn't seem to matter what they put in the the gentleman's agreement group chat. They are just going to keep doing it regardless. Now, SlasheR's comment in the Twitch chat there on the flank was mainly about the actual state of the league itself in terms of the way that it's run from an outside perspective, the amount of events there are, stuff like this. And look, was it true that when SlasheR was in charge of things, okay, he wasn't really, it's not like he ran the league, but it was considered that SlasheR and Accuracy as well were the big players in enforcing gentlemen's agreements, ensuring that players didn't step out of line, making sure the rule set and what the pros decided to use was valid and perfectly reasonable. And okay, SlasheR got some criticism at the time for certain things, understandably maybe, but was that a better scenario than what we have today? Quite possibly, yes. So this is what makes me wonder, going into the new game, what is going to be in the game that is going to be abusable? Because we've seen in the beta, snaking probably still exists. There's certain movement mechanics that are probably still going to exist. Hopefully, sound equalization isn't relevant really anymore because dead silence is going to happen. But there's always going to be things in this new game that are glitches that can be exploited that we don't yet know. It always happens. There's always a good few, a handful every single year. But 5-6 years ago, the pros came together to agree not to do it. Nowadays, the pros seem to come together to abuse them to the absolute maximum potential that they can. I don't really know if it's possible to stop this or if it's just kind of like a natural trend that happens, but whatever you think, Octane might be right that players like Cellium and others that are in the league today are not making it a better environment for the players or for the fans trying to watch from home, and games that actually aren't too bad look and play and feel worse than they might do otherwise. But then again, if the developers made better games without these issues, then it wouldn't be so much of a problem at all. So maybe, don't hate the player, hate the game. Just before we finish, wanted to mention here from Codmuse that we saw the league kickoff. I mentioned it the other day. If you guys are looking to get involved, we had loads of sign-ups to this really quickly. So thanks for all that did. And if you didn't get in time because all the starting spots have now been filled, then you can join the waitlist and register as a sub. So yeah, if you guys are still interested, then feel free to do that. But yeah, November the 12th for those that did sign up is all good and ready to go. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.